Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. How are you?
I'm good. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Happy anniversary as well. We are almost 1 year to the day recording our first podcast together, Fates Warning's Inside Out, and much to your, I guess, everything coming full circle, we'll do parallels this week, going back to 1991. But when you picked it, I don't think you realized that it was actually almost 30 years to the day that this album came out, because it was released on October 29th, 1991. So very, very timely choice, even if it was completely and wholly unintentional. But I look forward to getting to that. I just want to mention a couple of things that came out this week that I thought were really worth noting. Two things that I had actually sent to you offline. The first was a single by a band called Signum Draconis. And it is a rock opera, a double CD album rock opera based on The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. And this has a number of special guests on it. Mark Bowles is on this album, Ben Jackson of Crimson Glory, Simone from DGM, Oleg Shvirnov from Eldritch and Vision Divine, amongst others. And the single that I had heard was a song called Whirlwind of Lovers. And quite frankly, it reminded me a lot of that early Rhapsody stuff. So I thought it was worth
I thought you were going to say it reminded you a lot of high school.
Yeah, that too, based on a lot of the names I just mentioned for sure. I mean, I had sent it to you. What were your thoughts on it?
I liked it. I'd be curious to hear the rest of the album for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It should be interesting. And then the other single that I heard was a song called Passenger by Boston's Wilderrun, one of my favorite up-and-coming prog bands. Another epic tune. They one of the things I love about them is that every time you hear a Wilderrun track, I feel like you notice more and more stuff that's going on, because it just seems like there's so many tracks within a track within a track. But this album, I believe, is due out in January, or if not, sometime early next year. I am definitely looking forward to this release. Should be good. It should be good. The album is going to be called Epigon. It's their fourth studio album, and I think the release date is January 7th on Century Media Records. So it should be a good one.
Yeah, their first album was so good. Like, even something that I wasn't expecting to like, I guess, or maybe not even that. Just when I listened to it, I was like, this is not my usual thing that I'm drawn to, but I thought it was just so well done and so unique, and so this new single is really good, and I'm looking forward to hearing the whole thing. I have pre-ordered it, so
surprisingly good live too. You would think it would be very difficult to recreate that sound, but they do a nice job of it. And needless to say, when they're back on tour, I look forward to seeing them. As it seems like more and more tours are getting announced, as we've mentioned in weeks past and stuff like that. So it's exciting to see that, but we'll get there in the future. And for now, let's go back to 1991 and the Parallels album. I'll ask you this: why? I obviously know why you chose Fates Warning. Why did you choose this album as opposed to any of the others?
I love this album.
That's as good a reason as any. It's funny. A lot of people absolutely love this album, and I completely understand why. It's kind of a transitional album for them. Wouldn't you agree, just based on like a lot of the stuff that had come before it and the stuff that would come later in the 90s with, A Pleasant Shade of Grey and stuff like that? To me, this was a very much transitional but timely album for 1991.
Well, I did something this week that I have not done in our 1 year podcasting together, and that is to go back and listen to an entire episode that we did. I know you agree. I'm not a big fan of listening to myself, but I was curious what we had to say about Inside Out, and I was also kind of curious if we really sucked a year ago compared to now, 60 episodes later. And I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was rather listenable, but it was interesting because I kind of wanted to go into this with keeping like our thoughts on Inside Out and our ratings and review of Inside Out in the back of my head. And I think you had said too at the time about Inside Out being kind of like a transition. And the reason that I chose Parallels to give you a real reason is because when you asked me to choose an album that first time, I was trying to decide between these two, and because they are my two favorite Fates Warning albums, I think I chose Inside Out initially just because it was my first Fates Warning album. I think I got Parallels after Inside Out and A Pleasant Shade of Grey. I think this was my third Fates Warning album. I might have even gotten this after getting the live album Still Life that came out in '98. So it seemed like a good choice to kind of to review that other album, because we talked about Parallels quite a bit in the Inside Out episode, because I feel like they kind of go hand in hand with one another, and there's definitely a couple of tracks on here that feel like they might have fit right on Inside Out, especially the first and last track, I feel, and I know we'll talk about each song, in depth, but like you said, yeah, this is like, this is at a time where, when you go back to those really early Fates Warning albums, Night on Brocken, Inspector Within, Awaken the Guardian, those are the three albums that they recorded with, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name.
John Arch.
Yes, John Arch. They were more of like a traditional heavy metal band with kind of a progressive elements, I feel. And then I think with No Exit and Perfect Symmetry, they started to, not only did they get Ray Alder as their vocalist, but they also kind of, changed over to a more traditional progressive metal band, I feel like. And I feel like Parallels was kind of like this perfect marriage of that new Fates Warning sound, that new prog metal sound, with also a very like radio friendly and accessible, like kind of almost like a modern rock kind of vibe to it. What do you think?
I think that you definitely hear the progressive elements that would become the later albums, certainly Inside Out, definitely A Pleasant Shade of Grey, but I'll take it one step further. I actually hear stuff on this album, one or two tracks in particular, and I'll mention them a little bit later, that would have fit on Theories of Flight or A Long Day, Good Night, their last two albums, just because there's tracks that fit very well on those recent albums. But at the same time, there are 3 or 4 tracks on the album which I think were almost an intentional, I want to get radio play, let's try to kind of piggyback off the hair bands that were doing very well in the late 80s and even into the early 90s. And that was one of the things I was going to mention. I hear the signature Fates Warning sound with a bit of Firehouse or a bit of Slaughter or one of those bands that were really, really hot at the time. And I don't think it was unintentional, because there's 3 tracks in particular that harken back to that sound more than it does kind of the stuff that they would do 5 or 10 or even 20 or 30 years later.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I definitely, I mean, these Parallels and Inside Out are the albums I really know the best as far as all of Fates Warning's albums go. And they kind of fit right in the middle, chronologically, I think. But I would have to say that there are, like I said before, I feel like there are certain things that remind me of Inside. I feel like the last song, The Road Goes On Forever, I feel like that it almost is like a perfect last track, because it kind of leads into where I think Fates Warning is going to sound in a few years with Inside Out. But yeah, I agree with you that there's definitely songs like the middle of the album is really just like this, just super almost maybe poppy's not the right word, but it's just so catchy. The hooks in songs like Eye to Eye and Point of View and We Only Say Goodbye, like these are some of my favorite Fates Warning songs, and I think it's just because they're so catchy. And as soon as that the opening, riff or drum fill comes in, it just gets me like so excited, especially Eye to Eye, it just being one of those. Like when I hear the beginning of that song, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a fun 4 minutes. Like it's such a great tune.
We often talk about accessible prog, right? And I kind of drift towards some of the esoteric or some of the offbeat stuff. But as someone such as yourself who really likes
those are just nice words for weird.
Yeah, well, I have no problem saying that. My taste is varied, to say the least. But with you, you like that accessible stuff. And I don't want to say simple-minded, but I'll say accessible, right? So what I'll say is when it comes to like, this is really the beginning of accessible prog metal, right? I mean, there's no Seventh Wonder or Circus Maximus if there's no Fates Warning, because this was really the start of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with not only the songwriting. I think that goes without saying. Jim Matheos' songwriting is second to none. But the drumming, Mark Zonder's drumming on this album is like the epitome of progressive. Before there was this is before Images and Words. This is before, a lot of those hallmark prog metal albums. This was one of the first, even though it has those pop elements that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I agree. And, I always like to mention that the $1 Million bass player, Joe DiBiase, was the bass player on this album, and, Frank Oresti on guitar and, as we mentioned, Jim Matheos and Ray Alder kind of round up the lineup around this time. And, Images and Words, I think, comes out a year later. I think Parallels was released a little bit before Images and Words, so it's kind of, I feel like those two albums are very very indicative of what prog metal was at this time, and these were probably, if not the two biggest prog metal albums of 91 and 92. Very different.
But a connection between the two, which we'll get to later on.
Yeah. I feel like Fates Warning definitely was trying to do something more accessible, even though I think that Images and Words is a very accessible album for a prog album, but it has a lot more of those kind of funky prog metal elements, like, wacky keyboard solos and things like that. Whereas this, I feel like, is more of a straightforward rock album.
Or at least half the album. I think that, and maybe that's what part of the allure is. You have those really catchy, tight 4 to 5 minute songs. And then you have in the next breath, you have a song like, I don't know, The 11th Hour, which is just like completely different and very reminiscent of stuff that you would hear later on. And I guess it's the diversity, which is really interesting here. The argument I'm going to make, and I'll just kind of let the cat out of the bag now. When I listen to this album, obviously multiple times, because I've listened to it countless times, but this week multiple times, I realized that if I was creating the album, I would have had the track listing completely differently. I would have redone the entire album, and I'll get to that as we go along. But my biggest issue here is this album is much kind of like an Oreo cookie. It starts and ends with two of the weaker songs, in my opinion, and it's really that middle section, which is the hook here. For me, you kind of want to get to the cream in the middle of the Oreo. That's the problem with this album. If there is a problem, I think that they could have done a couple of things to really change the order, which would have made the album pop a little bit more and kind of given a little more contrast to some of these tracks.
Yeah, but it's like a triple stuff Oreo where, like, there's a lot of cream. Like,
yeah,
I agree. Like, the first and the last track are probably my two least favorite tracks on the album. And when I went back and listened to this again, I realized that they're like the two songs that I recognize the least too. And it was funny because as I listened to them, I thought to myself, man, these songs could have been on Inside Out. I feel like Leave the Past Behind has that kind of mid tempo, almost like it kind of has like Island in the Stream vibes to it. I feel like it's a little bit punchier, but not a lot. So I guess we can just start there since that's the first track on the album. It's just an odd choice to start things out because it's because you go into like Life in Still Water and Eye to Eye. Those are two songs that really pick up. So it's strange that they're going to start off with this mid-tempo song. It almost like kind of lulls you into this false sense of what the album is going to be like, because then it cuts into Life in Still Water, and then it's like, I feel like this is more of the predominant type of sound that the album has in for the most part. I would say the majority of songs have more of a punchiness to them, like the Life in Still Water. But Leave the Past Behind, really good tune. Don't get me wrong,
a bad tune. It's
just weird.
Tune.
It's just weird to open an album with something that's kind of just lacking energy, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Well, that goes back to my point. If I would flip-flop these first two tracks, I would have opened the album with Life in Still Water, and I would have gone into Leave the Past Behind. The problem with Leave the Past Behind is that it's a little bit repetitive, and if it wasn't for Ray Alder's vocals with some of those kind of like bent vocal lines during the chorus, it's a pedestrian tune that's just made better because of Ray's singing on the song. It's not one of my favorite songs on the album. It's a good song. It's not a great song, and the problem is when you're comparing it to the next track, Life in Still Water, which is just a phenomenal tune, it leaves something to be desired, and I would just flip the two tracks. And since we're talking about it, Life in Still Water is a drum clinic. This is where you really start hearing Mark Zonder absolutely shine. And it's like he's got every symbol and gadget and gizmo in the book, and he hits all of them, and they sound great. And it's so melodic. And so catchy. It's a song that's been growing. I think to this day, I enjoy it more and more every time I listen to it. I'm not even sure I noticed this track back in 1998 when I probably first heard the album, but it's one of my absolute favorites. From the opening note all the way to the end where the guitar fades out. To me, this should have opened the album.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think this song it's just one of those songs where, I mean, not to sound like Michael Cole, but it's like vintage Fates Warning. Like, it's just, as far as like their kind of more upbeat songs, this is exactly what makes me think of Fates Warning. And it makes me think of, and I'm sure we'll mention it, a few times, when Fates Warning headlined the Prague Power USA Festival in 2009, which was one of the reasons why I started attending the festival again, was to see them. That was my first, and I think to this day, the only time. No, that's not true. I saw them open for Sabotage after Disconnected came out. But this was the only time I've seen them play like a full headline set. And this was one of the songs that they played, and I thought it came across really well live.
Yeah, it's a fantastic live tune. I have been lucky enough to see most of this album played live at different times. They played 3 tracks at that Prague Power set. I've been fortunate enough to see other tracks as well. I think probably 2/3 of the album I've seen live. These tracks actually, I think, come off better live than they do on the album in many respects. And maybe that's a testament to these guys as live performers. They are one of the tightest live acts you will ever see. I think I mentioned that when we spoke about them last time, but it bears repeating. These guys are just machines live. And not a band I listen to that much, but a band I never miss on tour.
I mean, I can't really blame you. If Fates Warning played more often where I lived, I don't think I would ever skip seeing them. I mean, just that one time seeing them headline, I thought they were so fantastic. I thought the track, the set list, the songs that they chose were amazing. I thought that was such a great set list, and
it's one of my favorite sets.
To end with all of the entire Ivory Gate of Dreams. They played a couple of parts of Pleasant Shade of Grey, 3 of my favorite songs from Parallels, 2 of my favorite songs from Inside Out, Through Different Eyes, which I love, from Perfect Symmetry, a couple of my favorite of their newer songs, Another Perfect Day, and One. I mean, it basically was like, greatest hits in my mind.
And you didn't mention Still Remains, which might be my favorite track out of all of them. But that's a story for another podcast when we cover Disconnected. The next track here is Eye to Eye, and you mentioned this briefly, so I have a feeling I know where this is going. Talk about it. Talk about Eye to Eye and why you love this track so much.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah, no argument here.
This, first of all, there's a music video, and I'm always, a sucker for a music video. But I just love the way it starts out. It starts out like it's this mid-tempo song with the guitars going, and then the riff kicks in, and then it's like, here we go. I think this is the catchiest song on an album full of catchy songs. I'm no surprise it's going to be my song of the week, although there's a handful that come very close. Honestly, the next three songs, as a matter of fact, all at a certain point in time probably were my favorite song on this album. But Eye to Eye is the one that I always come back to, that I just love to hear it. I saw this live video of Fates Warning doing this song, and at the beginning where it's kind of quiet and the vocals start, you just hear the whole crowd singing the beginning of the song, and I just get goosebumps thinking about how cool that is. Like, just the fans singing the whole beginning of Eye to Eye. Like, super catchy chorus, just great solos. This could have been like, if hard rock, if anyone gave a crap about it in 1991, I think this would have made for a really strong radio song.
I completely agree, and I'll say this: I think that it's a little bit vanilla in the sense that it's kind of formulaic, but it's great. And to me, what absolutely makes the track is the bridge right before the final chorus. All we can really share is the coldness we feel and that silent memory of the moment we met. To me, that bridge right before the final chorus, with Ray Alder just doing one of his best vocal lines in any song, puts this over the top and makes a very, very good song one of their best.
Yeah, his vocals, I think, just elevate everything that they touch. I mean, he has such a fantastic and unique voice, and I don't know that it would be, like you said, I don't think it would be as good without him. Like, he just is. I think he's just such an iconic vocalist in metal. So I'm a big fan. No disrespect to Tom England from Evergrey, but I was disappointed when Ray left Redemption, just because, he was, for me, like, one of the main draws of the band was that there was another band that had a different style that he was in, so I could listen to Ray sing for two different bands that I really liked. So, different strokes for different folks, I guess, but I'm a big fan of Ray.
No question about that. What's interesting is, again, you talk about the contrast here, and a track like the 11th Hour, it's very different from the rest of this album, and it's kind of an outlier because of it. This is an absolutely epic tune. And to me, you mentioned it earlier, this is a precursor to, in my opinion, to Still Remains, a song that was written almost 20 years later. This long, epic tune. And I love this track. The way it starts out with that almost like a soft guitar sound with the percussion and then Alder singing over the top. They go into this heavy riff and tease what the rest of the song is, but then go right back into slowing it down before they go into the same riff again, and then it speeds off. This is brilliant songwriting. I mean, absolutely. You're not getting on the radio with this. I want to be clear. This is not a radio song. This is just an epic Fates Warning song. And the song takes off after that second riff, and it is heavy, which you would never expect after the first couple of minutes of the track. Probably my favorite track on the album, and well placed here in the sense that it's in between two of the catchiest tracks on the album.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, hey, listen, if November Rain in its entirety could be played on the radio, then the 11th Hour can too. But yeah, this song just, I don't know that I was very familiar with this song until I saw the band perform it at Prog Power, and I was like, I fell in love with it instantly. The fans singing along to the OO parts, like, it's ever since then, which was in 2009, so 12 years ago, it's been one of my favorite Fates Warning songs, and it probably would be, if I had to rank it, it would probably be a very close number 2 for me from this album. I mean, these 4 tracks, Eye to Eye, 11th Hour, Point of View, We Only Say Goodbye, like, arguably one of my favorite 4 songs in a row on any album that's ever come out.
Yeah, it's one after the other here. On any given week, I think this could be my track of the week, and it probably is my favorite track off the album. But I'm going to make my track of the week Point of View, just because I cannot get over. To me, this is like, I can understand why you like Eye to Eye so much, but Point of View is that same formula. I just like the track better, and I think it's a phenomenal live track. I love the lyrics. I think that it could easily be a radio hit just the same. And I think it's just a great start to the second half of the album. And again, we're only talking about 8 tracks here. It's not a long album, but I think that this track is one of their best as well. And every time I hear it live, it's one of those tracks you just have to sing along to. And the first time you hear it, you know the lyrics. After you hear it once, it just sticks with you.
I think at one point, I've always considered this, no pun intended, to be kind of a parallel song with Eye to Eye. Like and this was probably my favorite of the 2 at one point in time. I think over time, Eye to Eye is kind of a usurped Point of View, but I totally agree with you. These songs are definitely in similar veins, and I love this song too. It's another song that the band made a video for, and I think the lyrics to the song are just so good. And I love that, like I've mentioned before, I'm not a big lyrics guy, but I love that Ray Alder sings in a way that his enunciation makes it easy to understand what he's saying and easier to follow along with the lyrics, which I'm not always doing, especially with a lot of bands that I listen to that are from Europe. Sometimes the accents and stuff make it kind of hard to understand what they're saying. And I just feel like here, you just hear it
and sticks
very
with you
clearly. And I appreciate that about Ray's vocals. But yeah, this is a very fine choice for Song of the Week. And like I said, these just 4 songs right in the middle of the album are just so good. I think any of them really could take home that crown for either one of us on any given day.
If you asked me next week, I probably would oscillate back to the 11th Hour or something else, but that's where we are this week. The next track, We Only Say Goodbye, to me, this was the track that should have closed the album. And when it goes back to, like I said, I hear this album and I just hear the way that I would have put it together if I was producing it. We Only Say Goodbye is another live favorite band. The fans love hearing this track, and it's another one that I think probably could have wound up on the radio. I like the contrast here. It has this kind of a dark intro, but then picks up quite nicely despite the fact that it's lyrically a very sad and somber song, but you wouldn't know that if you just listened to the music without the lyrics. But to me, this should have closed the album, especially with the 2 songs that are about to follow it. I will get to those in a second, but what are your thoughts on the 6th track, We Only Say Goodbye?
Love it. Probably my first favorite song from this album. Like when I first heard the album, this is the one that I think jumped out to me. I don't know if I've ever seen them play it live, which I would love to. I don't know. I love the song. It's so good. Just another really catchy tune. I think another song that probably could have been a radio hit for Fates Warning if anybody was paying attention to the style of music at that time. But yeah, I think the bridge into the chorus, thought I heard you call out my name, but you only said goodbye. Like it's so good. And again, Ray is fantastic, and this is just another really great song. And actually, I'd be very curious. I would love to see. I'd love to see you make a playlist of this album in the order that you think it should go in. I think that would be super interesting. Maybe you could put that together and we can post it during the week, because I would like to listen to. I'd like to listen to this album, the Justin director's cut version.
Indulge me. I will put it together. I will post it this week, and just again, my opinion. It's just the point of view, but I will put this together my way. I want to see if some of these tracks, and by some of these tracks, I'm really talking about the first track and the last 2 tracks. I want to see if it pops for you a little more if you just listen to it my way. I haven't done it, but in my head, that's how it should have been. Don't Follow Me, the next track, is like this mid-paced rocker tune. I don't say it's not bad. I just think it's unspectacular, and it doesn't have the hooks like the tracks that precede it. And I think that even though it's something that would have been found very easily on even a recent Fates Warning album, I could have easily seen this track on their last album. It's kind of a filler track, and I just don't see. I don't know. It doesn't grab me, and maybe it's different for you. And if it is, I'd love to hear it. It just doesn't hold a candle to the 4 or 5 tracks that precede it.
Yeah, I think it's a victim of placement, because I think it is a good song, and I enjoy it too. But it's kind of like it has the unfortunate job of following 4, or if you want to count Life in Stillwater, 5 like really, really strong tracks. So maybe it's just misplaced. But I do really like this song. Like I think it's one of the faster paced songs on the album, and definitely gets you like tapping your foot. I think maybe the problem, maybe the chorus just isn't as catchy as the other faster paced songs like Eye to Eye and Point of View. But I still think it's a good song. I just think it doesn't hold up to those songs that it preceded it.
Yeah. Again, not a bad track for me. Just not up there with some of the others. And the track, the album ends properly with Road Goes On Forever. And this track is really a slow-paced ballad. To me, the best part of this song is actually the mix. There are a bunch of ambient sounds on this thing, which are kind of really cool. And these again, great percussion here. To me, this should have been the penultimate track. I don't love this as an album closer. Not that it's a terrible song, but again, I just think it's misplaced. And it goes back to the reason why I'll be posting my mix of the album, or I guess my order. Do you like this tune, or do you kind of get lost by this point in the album?
It reminds me of maybe one of the lesser, I don't know, like one of the songs from Inside Out that didn't excite me as much as the rest, I guess. Like, I feel like it kind of, like I said before, it kind of like preps you for the next album. I don't know if they had any intentions, but this reminds me a lot of, again, like kind of like an Island in the Stream, kind of a mid-tempo, kind of and again, like, I said that like, Eye to Eye is a song that, or Point of View, I forgot which one I said it about. It was only 15 minutes ago. I said like, that's the song I think of, or maybe I was talking about Life in Still Water, just about like what I think of when I think of that, upbeat, fast-paced Fates Warning style. But this song is what I think of when I hear like this kind of more mellow, more mid-tempo, Fates Warning. Like, this is kind of also their bread and butter, if you will. They're really good at both of those styles. But I just think that the way, like you said, the way the album is ordered, I think the styles kind of clash a little bit. And maybe that's why it seems more like an outlier. But I do enjoy the song. I just, I don't know. It's just it's not what I would have ended it with. I feel like 11th Hour, or like you said, like We Only Say Goodbye would have been maybe a better ending track. But I mean, I feel like I'm splitting hairs at this point because this album is really, really good. It's just, unfortunately, there's just like 3 out of 8 tracks that aren't fantastic like the other 5. So
yeah, it's more than half, but not quite 3/4 of the album is brilliant. And then there's other tracks which are kind of cool or decent. What I'll say is this, and this is the biggest compliment I can give it. It holds up. You're talking about an album that literally came out 30 years ago this week, and it still holds up. And I enjoy this album every bit as much as I did when I first heard it 20 years ago, and now almost 25 years ago. This album holds up, and it was a nice kind of trip down memory lane here because it's not an album that's in regular rotation for me. But when I heard it, I said to myself, I enjoyed it every bit as much as I did in 2001 or 1998 or even 2010, which is probably the last time I played it. Good stuff. Just, I don't know if it's their deepest album, but I think that the high points are exceptionally high, and there's really no low point per se. It's just some stuff that's, kind of average in the grand scheme of things, but it definitely holds up.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty darn well.
Scale of 1 to 10, what are you giving this?
Well, before I do that, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you remember what you rated Inside Out?
This is from memory, but I think I rated it an 8. Is that correct?
I think you actually gave it an 8.5.
Okay.
I think. And I gave it, I think I gave it a 9.0. And, I guess at the time I was like questioning like which of the the 2 albums I like better, and I think that I'm going to say that I give Parallels the edge over Inside Out, just because I think that Inside Out I think only has Outside Looking In as that one track that really is super catchy, and I feel like Parallels has Eye to Eye and Point of View and We Only Say Goodbye, and even 11th Hour, which is not really in the same style as those other 3. It's still a super catchy and memorable song. So for me, I think Parallels gets a 9.25. I think that the weaker songs drag it down a little bit, but I still think that I do prefer it over Inside Out, and I don't know every Fates Warning album as well as I should, but I would probably call this one my favorite.
I would agree with that. And I'll say this. with the gift of revisionist history, now having rated 50 albums or whatever we've done at this point, I think Inside Out is probably closer to an 8. I thought that's what I gave it. If I gave it an 8.5, I gave it an 8.5. I think that this album...
I could be mistaken. I thought you said 8.5.
I very well might have. I think that this album is an 8.5. I think it is probably my favorite Fates Warning release, up there with A Pleasant Shade of Grey for sure. I think that this is a step, maybe a half step above Inside Out. So I think that that's probably more in the 8 range now that we have this ongoing scale. This is more of an 8.5 to me. Far from perfect, but a very, very good album. And the high points are as high as it gets for the band. Songs like 11th Hour, as good as it gets. I think that Fates Warning has a ton of great songs, and I think that they have other tracks which are not as memorable, littered throughout their entire discography. This album, no different, except that it has 5 really, really strong tracks, as opposed to other albums which maybe only half the album or a third of the album is like super, super memorable material. So that's kind of what separates this. And to your point, Inside Out has its moments. I think Monument is one of the catchiest songs ever, but at the same time, that's, that and other tracks on there is probably only half the album, which is as catchy as this. So it's one step down for me, but close and certainly in the conversation for some fantastic prog metal that holds up.
Yeah, and I think they definitely have their own style. I feel like they're not 2 albums that are the same. Like, it's kind of like how Dream Theater followed Images and Words with Awake, which I think was a very different album. And I think that Fates Warning kind of did the same thing. They weren't looking to make parallels again when they did Inside Out. And I think that's what makes both albums special. But I agree with you that this one kind of edges out Inside Out a little bit. I think just because there's the stronger songs. I think there's just more of those stronger Fates Warning songs, like you said. And I had mentioned the deluxe edition of Inside Out when we did that episode. There's also a deluxe edition of Parallels, which I bought for the bonus DVD, which has a live has a 13 track set list filmed live from New Haven, Connecticut in February of 1992. Somebody had the foresight to film this concert. Probably zero idea that there'd ever be any want for a live concert on video or DVD. The quality is such that it looks like a guy with a camcorder in 1992 filmed a Fates Warning concert, but still, it's very cool. The set list is incredible. It's, all the Fates Warning material from Parallels and before. There's exclusive interviews. There's behind the scenes footage. There's the music videos for Eye to Eye and Point of View are on here. And then there's a deluxe, a bonus disc as well, which has 8 live tracks from a show that they did in January of 92 in California, and 6 demos from the sessions of recording Parallels, including including Quietus, but that's actually one of the live tracks that they play on both the live CD and the live DVD. But I said this about Inside Out. I'll say it about Parallels. If you do not own this album, get this version, because you get this really, I just think a really complete collection of stuff from that era of Fates Warning. And that's those are my thoughts.
Nice. I like it. I've yet to see that, but I may hop on your Plex server later and I'll take a look, because I've not seen the bonus material. I just have the original albums. There
you go.
I
had no idea James Labrie did backing vocals on Life in Still Water, by the way.
Yes, that was news to me as well, and that was the Images and Words connection that I had alluded to earlier. I had no idea that was the case, but kind of cool to read about. He
was warming up for his tryout with Iron Maiden.
Yes, which is what we're going to get to next, which is the news of the week. And let me tell you something. I almost spit out the drink I had in my hand when I saw this. James Labrie said that he had turned down an offer to audition for Iron Maiden. This goes back to 1993. Bruce Dickinson had just left the band. They were talking to Iron Maiden's management at the time when they were looking for a new management company. And as the story goes, he got pulled aside by Rod Smallwood of Iron Maiden and was actually asked if he had an interest in auditioning to become their new lead singer. Is this a joke? Like, did this really happen? Like, I've never heard this before. And the thought of James LaBrie singing The Trooper, I'll put it to you this way. I heard him sing Number of the Beast. I can't picture this.
Yeah, but could you picture him singing the songs from X Factor and Virtual 11? Because that's pretty much what he would have been doing.
Yeah, but those albums hadn't come out yet.
But isn't that what they would have been auditioning him for?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, I guess they were auditioning for the Blaze Bayley role, but the reality is, even when they played live, they weren't playing all of this material, right? Like, he was going to have to sing Run to the Hills. He was going to have to sing The Trooper. He was going to have to sing Aces High. I mean, can you imagine James LaBrie singing Aces High?
Well, maybe that's why he didn't go to the audition. Then they'd have to hear him sing live.
Fascinating story nonetheless. And you can go to Blabbermouth for some direct quotes on this. Fascinating stuff. And just one other piece of information that I thought people would be interested in. Modern Drummer Magazine has announced a Neil Peart Spirit of Drumming Scholarship that they'll be offering to a lucky fan, I suppose, with the recipient getting 52 weeks of free drum lessons, a 1-year subscription to Modern Drummer, and then obviously a selection of classic Rush albums. I thought this was really cool. They're looking for a 14 to 21-year-old kid to basically get this scholarship. And although I don't meet the criteria, I thought it was really cool.
Oh, almost. You just missed.
Yeah, by about double the age. But I got to be honest with you, really cool, and obviously trying to keep on the legacy and keep passing down the legacy of perhaps the greatest drummer of all time. So kudos to them for that. And of course, that brings us to our album of the week for next week, which is the first Monday of the month. You got something else. You got something else. Let's hear it.
Well, I just found out this earlier today. And I wanted to just mention it because I was a unfortunate victim of missing out on seeing Unleash the Archers on their last run in the U.S. because of some issues with crossing the border from Canada, and their show in Rochester unfortunately got canceled. But they have announced that they will be doing another leg of the tour in December. I believe they've rescheduled all of the shows that they had to cancel, Rochester being one of them. And Aether Realm and Seven Kingdoms will be rejoining them as well. So if you saw them in last time, so we'll see them again. And if you missed them last time, now you got another shot. I'm super pumped. I was really disappointed that I had to miss that show. And I'm happy that I got a second chance, so Merry Christmas to me.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you, and you'll definitely enjoy that show. It was my first foray into the live entertainment genre in the last 2 years. You will not be disappointed, and I got to be honest with you, Unleash the Archers has really stepped up their live game. I remember seeing them in Atlanta a couple of years ago, and they were good, but they are much better now. So I think you're definitely going to enjoy that show. It's actually coming back to New York City, and I'm hoping to catch them in December as well.
Yeah, oh my God, brain fart. I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to say that I still have not seen a live metal show maybe since the last Prog Power, and this might be the next one that I see, which at that point, it'll be over 2 years. It's over 2 years now. So you can only imagine how amped I'm going to be for this show, especially considering that they have two openers that I actually enjoy quite a bit, and the headliner being a band that I absolutely love. So I think that's going to be a hell of a way to get back into the swing of things again. I'm itching so badly to see a metal show. It's just been way too long.
But you're going now, a little peek behind the curtain. The day before this is going to drop, you're going to see a show, though. Not a metal show, but an enjoyable show nonetheless. You want to share with everyone who you're going to see or who you saw yesterday?
Who did I see? Oh yeah. The remaining two monkeys, Mickey Dolenz and Mike Nesmith. Yeah, the Metal Exchange is going to talking about the monkeys, but they were my first favorite band, and I kind of assumed that this might be the last incarnation of a live Monkees concert, so I couldn't resist. So that's definitely not going to be my first metal show in 2 years. Not
Something
even close,
tells me they're not going to be whipping out any classics from Death, but nonetheless, I'm sure it'll be an enjoyable show, and obviously good to see live music again. Next week, we come back with another listener request. This one comes from Dale Gantz, mutual friend of the show and mutual friend of ours. He wants to hear Tesla's The Great Radio Conspiracy, and let me tell you something. I am woefully negligent when it comes to Tesla. This is a band that we've obviously heard of many, many times, and they were kind of on the last end of the hair metal movement, and one of those glam rock bands from the late 80s and early 90s. I have never heard this album in its entirety. I don't even know if I recognize any tracks off of this album, so it's going to be a very good listen for me for a band that I feel like I should know. I just never took the time to really dive into, so I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to this, and obviously picking my own album for the following week. So it should be a fun 2 weeks as we march ahead.
Well, I thought Tesla was a car until Dale made his request. So I'm kidding. I know that I've heard songs from Tesla as a subscriber to XM Sirius Radio. I do get Ozzy's Boneyard, so I'm sure I've heard Tesla. But I couldn't name a Tesla song if you put a gun to my head. So this will definitely be an education for me as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and you enjoy your little experience with the Monkees and Mickey Dolenz. And to everyone out there, thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next week with some Tesla.
Yeah, and on a personal note, just wanted to say thanks to everybody that's supported us in this last year. I can't believe we've managed to crank out 60 episodes of the Metal Exchange, had some very memorable interviews. We're not planning on slowing down at all. So thank you to everybody, and thank you, Justin, for being an awesome partner.
Well, thank you, buddy. It's been fun, and I look forward to many, many, many more. Love the feedback, love the response, and we'll keep bringing you more material as long as you want to hear it. So next week, The Great Radio Conspiracy, and we forge forward to the end of 2021 as we get closer to our Best of the Year episode, which is always going to be fun. I have my list ready to go, or at least I'm working on it, but I feel like I'm woefully behind. So something to keep in mind, and a lot to catch up on. But we'll get there as we forge on with the rest of 2021. Enjoy the week, buddy. I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.